Hey, you didn't go live, dude.
What are you talking about?
Oh, now I see it. Okay. Never mind. It's a little bit delayed.
Thank you, sir. Morty here, extraordinaire. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Mad Mamluks. My name is Sim. Along with me are my co-hosts, my man Mort out of Buffalo, New York, and Mahim,
Hello.
the host of Sultans and Sneakers, and His Eminence Allama Sheikh Amr Al-Baghdadi.
El Kukui.
Speaking about Kakui, Morty.
Oh, my God. If you guys haven't seen the UFC, this last fight, not between El Kukui.
Spoiler alert.
Dude,
Happened like 4 days ago,
Wait,
right?
which fight are you talking about?
so
Era.
I'm talking about the fight. Man, there were just so many. There were so many good fights. Did you see the whole way? Hold on, Amr. Did you see the whole thing? By the
Yeah.
way, so you saw it from beginning to end. You saw Moreno. You saw everyone fight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so which one did you say was your best fight that you liked?
The most dominant was obviously over, what's his name? Ferguson, because I didn't think he was going to toy it around like that. Moreno fight was the fight of the night. That was a dope fight, dude.
Okay, so we're talking about the main event, which was Figuereido versus Moreno, and why I think that fight
Mm-hmm.
had to be probably the best 125 fight in the history of the UFC.
Yeah, it was that good. Did you watch it?
No, I didn't see it.
We'll watch it right afterwards.
Yeah?
Right before.
Dude, I don't know how. Like, I have a newfound respect for Brandon Moreno.
Yeah.
Like, just, I mean, everyone knows that Figueiredo is dominant. Like, his size, I mean, for a 125er, he walks around at like 140, right? So 150 almost, I think he walks around at. So he sheds like almost like 25 pounds to fight. And if you look at him, there's not an ounce of fat in the guy. Everyone knows he's a straight up striker, right? Like, I mean, when and the punches that Brandon Moreno took from this guy, and like, it was so confusing because he was like a zombie. Like, Figueiredo thought he was going to just knock him out within 2 to 3 rounds and then like just hammer it away. And Brandon Moreno just rallies back, keeps coming back. He doesn't go down. He's like a zombie, bro. And for 5 rounds, it's full energy.
I didn't think that he would come back. That was insane. And there's no way I mean, even just in the opening round, I was like, dude, they're both taking so many hits. And they're both monsters, bro. That was, like you said, I think it was probably the best 125 fight I've ever seen. The back and forth was insane.
I heard that Dana White said that was the best 125 he's seen. I mean, the best fight ever he's ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, he was that, like, I mean, that's definitely the best fight of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, the thing is, like, I just don't know how Brandon Moreno took those shots because, I mean, it's not, I mean, yeah, you might have thought, like, in the first round, like, okay, Brandon's holding his ground, but there was no doubt that Figueiredo was dominant. Like, I mean, you thought this was not going to last second, third round. Like, there's no way. But there were moments where numerous times where they just both went to southpaw and just went bang. I mean, like, just swinging left and right. And, like, what the hell is going on here? It reminds me of, who's that guy, our brawler, man. What's our friend? The guy who always had that split over his eye, dude. The other Mexican guy to California, Stockton, or I think Arizona. Oh, I'm forgetting his name. I'm sorry. Diego Sanchez.
Yeah.
He just goes absolutely balls out every fight, dude. That's how this was.
He's actually thinking of retiring. He said this life is too traumatic, just the fight life, and I think he's calling it quits, man.
Well, I mean, I think he should. I mean, after. Yeah, I mean, I think he should. Yeah, after.
Who else was on that card?
I mean, well, there was that Tony Ferguson fight, and El Kukui, like, I don't know, man. I think he's just got to take a step back, bro. I mean, like, I felt bad for him.
I think that Oliveira is that good now. Oliveira, remember, he's been working on it for a long time. He's at his prime now. I think this new generation, dude, El Kukui had nothing for him, bro. Nothing.
Oliveira was just like, I mean, I don't think he could have fought a better fight.
No, he's
like, he didn't have a single error.
He's at his peak now. He's at his peak, and his jiu-jitsu was just something else, man. Who would have thought that he would pull that type of jiu-jitsu on Ferguson, man?
You know what though? I will say one thing though. I think they were overhyping and say, "Has anyone seen Tony Ferguson this way, and I'm like thinking like, bro, I don't care what you say, dude. Justin Gaethje beat the dog crap out of Tony Ferguson. Like, there's no way. I mean, I get it. Charles Oliveira, you give him, good. I mean, you give him props for the way he fought against Tony Ferguson, but Justin destroyed this man. I mean, there's no doubt about it that Justin destroyed Tony Ferguson. Maybe one could argue, there was just a last-minute fight. It didn't really. He didn't have a proper training camp for it. He was training for Habib and not for Justin. Fine, you can make the argument, but I mean, there's no doubt that his loss to Justin was worse than this one. I'll tell you that much.
Make sure you guys send in your questions and comments through our chat. We actually told you guys about a guest that was supposed to come on representing RIS, the Reviving the Islamic Spirit conference that happens in Canada. And unfortunately, we had to cancel that podcast, the event, because, well, RIS is under quite a bit of fire right now. So
suits them right for, kicking Sheikh bin Baya off the lineup.
Look at this guy.
It's good to have him here, though, man.
This guy, constant government bootlicker.
I mean, listen. I mean, they let Borderline Kafirat Ibu Patel on the platform.
Well, what you Kafirat? What?
Is that even a proper term? Kafirat? That's like a female.
Did you say Kafirat?
Yeah, Kafirat. Like Ibu Patel.
I thought you said a Kafirat. I'm like, oh, Kafira. Oh, Kafirat. Like a bunch of female Kafirat. Okay.
I mean, Ibu Patel's a dude though, but still, he's Ismaili, so he probably believes he's like a female. Because you open up one floodgate of deviant akida, you might as well open up gender fluidity too. So, anyways, they let people like Ibu Patel on. Nobody says jack about that. And now you bring in one of the kibar ulama from the Muslim world.
Kibar ulama, I like.
And now people are I mean, the people who the thing is, did the people who bail on RIS because of Sheikh bin Bayad, did they come back and all right, we'll come on now? Did that happen?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. Isn't one of those guys Khalid Latif?
Imam Khalid Latif and Zainab Ansari.
Right? But wait, is this thing being? This is it's not live, right? This is going to be a virtual thing, anyways, right?
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, so who cares?
To me,
nobody even knows who's coming. It's virtual.
I mean, it's like getting on a Zoom call, right? That's what I was saying.
Well, look, whether it's Zoom or in person, there's still going to be people who listen, and it's still a platform that has a considerable audience that will definitely tune in and get their ideas. The ideas will get disseminated. My issue is that rather than canceling the dude or canceling your own appearance because someone else or you deeply disagree with that person, such as Abdullah bin Baya, whom I also disagree with in his position, and many of us amongst our listeners do as well. My issue is that why don't you just change your speech, whatever you're talking about, and you address him. You use that platform and you make a counterpoint against him instead of the whole idea of I'm going to back out because you're giving someone else a platform. It's just weak to me. It seems like you're chicken. You can't actually put up an argument. So the only defense you can do is put up a protest by I'm just not going to show up.
Yeah, let me see what kind of other heathens that RIS has bought on in the past.
Heathens.
And nobody cared about. Well, people were fine with.
Yeah. So wait.
They're fine with Ismailis, right? But Sheikh bin Baya, nah.
Well, I think the majority of the problems is that when you don't have any factors that you make, or you don't have any rules that you've set out to cancel someone from your platform, and it's just some arbitrary thing where you're relying on the social temperature or the social climate on whoever's acceptable, that becomes problematic. Now, if you have set guidelines on who's acceptable and who's not, then it can be. I just don't like this whole thing. I don't like if someone, a future guest of ours, said, "Oh well, the Mad Mamluks, you guys hosted Mufti Abu Layth, and as a form of protest, I'm not going to show up on your podcast. So that just seems like the biggest, weakest way of showing your opposition, your protest. You know, it
Rather,
just
they
seems.
should come on and say, "Why did you bring him on?"
Yeah, why did you bring him on? Why? These are my counterpoints. This is what I would like to mention, or these are my rebuttals to his argument.
Yeah.
But this is just so weak.
Well, I think the thing comes on the financial gain, right? Because I know even if you're going to come there and talk about it, people will pay to speak and pay to see it, right? So ultimately the organization gets money for it, right? Now, but let me ask you this though. I'm totally, I don't really keep up to date with all this stuff. So they're against bin Bayah because he's aligned with the UAE, and the UAE is what, like they're bombing Yemen? Is that what? I mean, like what's the whole thing? Like, I mean, they're supporting Israel. Like, what's the?
Oh, you missed the last week's
Oh, that's
podcast,
right.
bro.
You weren't
Yeah, you were
here.
here. So what happened was, bin Bayah, Sheikh Abdul bin Bayah was the
Say bin Bayah's name again. Say Sheikh bin Bayah.
What? Bibi.
Sheikh Bibi King. Go ahead.
Sheikh Bibi. Oh no, that's be misconstrued as a Bibi Netanyahu, bro. We don't
Can't win.
Abdullah bin Bayah. Anyway, man, Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayah. So, anyway,
Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayah was part of this committee called the UAE Fatwa Council. Am I right, man? What's wrong?
You were just like, shit.
it's the accent kicks in. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. Go ahead. It's funky.
Okay, so esteemed scholar Abdullah bin Bayah was part of the UAE Fatwa Council, who in effect said or declared Ikhwan al-Muslimin, aka the Muslim Brotherhood, a long-standing, prestigious organization spread throughout the Muslim world, as a terrorist organization. And the implications are far-reaching. It can impact any organizations that are funding branches or organizations that were started by the Muslim Brotherhood. If you give them money, like for example, we don't know the implications of this, but if a UAE citizen or a citizen of a country that recognizes this condemnation, this fatwa or whatever, they could be, they can be.
They can be considered a terrorist
they can be
organization, too.
considered someone who is funding terrorism.
Or sympathizing.
So bottom line, the MSA is a terrorist organization. The Egyptian government is a terrorist organization. I mean, Mohammed Morsi, their government. But you know what I think this is coming down from? There's a large push which originated from, I don't know if you guys mentioned this or not, but from Saudi Arabia, where they believe that the root of Al-Qaeda and these things were rooted in the origin of people like Hassan al-Banna and Sayyid Qutb. And they even, and this is, by the way, a common sentiment that used to be very prominent during the hyper-Arab nationalism during the time of Gamal Abdel Nasser. It actually even went forward to Syria. If you guys recall the massacre in Hama. In Hama, that was done because of they called them the Muslim Brotherhood, and they believe that they were politicizing Islam and essentially corrupting what was disturbing the balance. So I'm going to assume that this pressure probably came from Saudi Arabia to show them, to show the world now that, hey, look, you know what? We as the Gulf countries and rich countries denounce terrorism and denounce any affiliation with it, right? And obviously that's going to have a positive reverberation for them, because they're going to try to get involved with, they want support from America. They want to normalize relations with Israel. They want to, increase their trade and influence in that region. So I'm assuming it has something to do with that. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
For Morty and Sim, a more political question. Isn't it that the UAE and Saudi are always in competition, and they don't actually really work together, do they? Aren't they kind of like enemies of each other?
I mean, they're in competition in a way that, like, it's like you and Adil, right? Like your little brother and you. But I mean, the big brother's always the big brother, right? And that's Saudi Arabia. The big brother, the big dog in the Khalij is Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Bahrain, the UAE, Al Emirat, and what's up, Kuwait. They answer, but I mean, to be honest, Qatar used to, but now they've kind of done their own thing.
And the third partner is Israel.
Right, and then Oman has generally tend to be neutral for a long time. Like they would not say yes or no to anything. So really,
for more, check this out. There's a sentiment that people usually, anytime I hear them talking about UAE and Saudi Arabia, it's like UAE far surpassed Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is trying to stay relevant like UAE is, because UAE has, lots of tourism. They got all this stuff going for them, and a lot of people talk as if Saudi is just falling away, and they have very few strings that they're holding on to, and UAE just completely trumped them. Is there any
so? Let me just tell you this: the money is in Saudi Arabia. Okay, yeah. The money is Saudi, all right, and the relationship is Saudi Arabia. The connection to the Western world is Saudi Arabia. They have been they're like the gateway to the Western world, to America, to Israel, to all. They are a gateway. They've not only because of the old money, but because they've established themselves as that or whoever did, when the positions of power, they were the ones that were the go-to guys. So they've built those relationships over the years, right? Nahyan himself, Sheikh Zayed himself was doing a lot of himself, but you're talking about generations of the royal family that have made relationships with Washington, with the British government, with Israel. I mean, it's just like there's too much history there.
What is Saudi providing to the United States now? Like what's their bread and butter with the United States? Is it just a reputation, or is there some? I know the arms, like the arms dealings and all that kind of stuff, but is that the only thing they have now as far as?
Well, there's oil. I mean, oil has always been number one. I mean, oil. They get cheap oil, right? They use that oil money to buy, to fund America's defense, military industrial complex. They also provide a buffer for Iran. Right, and they also are a source. For a long time, they were a place where they could launch attacks from. Like they were a safe haven. If you needed to have an emergency landing or a safe zone, or to, run some operations before you went boots on ground in Syria or anywhere else, Saudi Arabia has traditionally been a safe zone for them. And maybe now with this whole thing of them recognizing the Muslim Brotherhood as a quote terrorist organization, they may be also moving in the field of intelligence. The mukhabarat, like what kind of intelligence gathering, for their interest. Are they going to be made aware of any possible potential terrorist attacks or some extremist or whatever it may be? Right, that kind of information gets shared.
Before MBS's term, were the Brotherhood considered a terrorist organization in Saudi Arabia, or no? Or did they look down upon?
So, I mean, they look at Johaman al-Athaybi as a Muslim Brotherhood.
Oh, is that what it is? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, that's when they believe. They say the first stench of the Muslim Brotherhood was Johaman al-Athaybi. That's what they say.
Al-Athaybi was the one who did the siege of Mecca, essentially. He's the one who...
1970 something, was it?
Yeah. After he had him, and he declared his brother-in-law the Mahdi or something, and...
his brother-in-law declared him to be the Mahdi.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Something like that.
I mean,
somebody was
the guy essentially was someone was that, but I think I don't know the whole story behind the guy, but apparently he started off well thinking that this oil was amwal nas, and it was like wealth of the ummah, and that the king shouldn't have control, but he just went like to the next level. Like he just said, he actually barricaded himself. They actually got in the haram by faking a janaza, and instead of putting bodies, they put guns. And so when they got in the haram, they just uncovered the guns, and they just basically held it hostage for 3 days, and like they welled up in the well of Zamzam. Like that's where they barricaded themselves into.
So basically like French commandos and partners.
They took
the shahada, right?
Yes.
They took a temporary shahada to enter the haram and kill off Juhayman and his brother-in-law's army of what was it, like 700 people or something?
Not even. No, dude, there was like maybe like 20 people.
No. It was much more than that.
No, that were barricaded. No. Maybe outside he had some supporters, but actually him himself, no, like 220, 30 people. You can look it up, but it wasn't that many. But they were heavily armed. Keep in mind, the Saudis never really had to deal with this kind of insurrection before. They never had to deal with that. They didn't know how to do a commando op when you had a huge. I mean, what was the war they fought? Right? I mean, they've never really traditionally. This was the first time they had like a hostage situation.
Iran hostage situation happened in Saudi.
No, but I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, dude. Like the Saudi intelligence or Saudi military never had to deal with the hostage situation.
He had 500 people who
Inside the haram?
Yeah, it was.
They were barricaded inside?
1979, the first day of the Islamic year, 1400, Great Mosque of Mecca was seized by a well-organized group of 400 to 500 men under Al-Udaybi's leadership. The siege lasted for more than 2 weeks before the Saudi special forces and French, it should be listed here, broke into the mosque. French special forces provided special tear gas, which prevents aggressiveness and slows down breathing. Al-Udaybi was executed by Saudi authorities in public on the 9th of January,
No, the
1980.
similar thing happened with the revolt of the Iranis, right? In the Haram too, but I think that was earlier than that, right?
Oh man, this is around the time when I was born. Seriously,
Yeah, 1980.
this is a cursed year, Yanni.
Yeah, 1979. Yeah, I told you. My brother was born then.
I was 1980 though. 1980 was when he was executed.
That's crazy.
So you're like a bad omen then.
No, maybe like Udaybi died and then I took his place in like the universe. No,
Oh my god. Oh
No, man. In
my
terms of like
God.
being a fitan.
You're a fitan, yeah. You're a fitan for people, unfortunately. So no, I always was curious about that the power dynamics between the UAE and Saudi Arabia. So as far as the UAE is concerned now, you guys know what is happening with because supposedly there's a lot of people that are associated with the Muslim Brotherhood in UAE right now. What are they doing with all that?
That's a good
A
question.
lot of people that travel there, a lot of people that are scholars there, a lot of them are from the Brotherhood.
Forget about that. Now, imagine all the money that's being wired around the world, and money that's going to organizations that are considered Muslim Brotherhood organizations, or even the origins of them were associated with Muslim Brotherhood.
So now you're not. Yeah. So now you're talking about stuff that's hitting the key issues, Tim. Like traditionally, the MSAs and like I mentioned earlier, all of these were traditionally considered Muslim Brotherhood organizations.
They were
Right, and they received a lot of funding from Khalij countries, right? So that's going to stop, essentially, right? Some of these ICNA, they used to receive funding, right? These kind of things will traditionally that were funded by the wealthy governments of the Gulf will now see a huge drop in contributions because they are now deciding that, hey, this brand of Islam, although there may be some peaceful peaceful people inside of it or who are generally peaceful, but for some reason they're gonna say it leads to extremism, and so we can no longer be part of that. We want to. I don't know if they want to start from scratch and then, or if they want to create this new whatever they're thinking, but they're thinking that this is too much of political Islam and they don't want, political Islam to be in the hands of people that they can't control, right? Essentially, like, you know what? Because, when you're sending money overseas and you're creating organizations like mosques and or masajids and institutions, right? Yes, you have trust and you have like board of directors, but there's very little oversight once you give that money, right? Like, I mean, once it's gone, right? I mean, you don't really know what happens behind doors. So for them, they're probably, I would only assume that they probably got pressure from the Trump administration to say, hey, listen, you got to stop supporting terrorism. You've been turning a blind eye to these people that are radicalized or politicizing Islam, and to get in their good faith, they probably said, yep, you know what, we're just going to stop it. It doesn't benefit us anyways. You see what I'm saying?
The funny part to me, at least anyone who's familiar with the Muslim Brotherhood, is that they're such a far cry from what they were, at least 50, 60 years ago, from what they were originally meant for. the reestablishment of the caliphate and all that, but they're not even remotely close to that. They're still working within democratic institutions, but they're not working to uplift or uproot institutions of power within countries where they've won. Like in Tunisia or whatever. They're just a shell of what they formerly were, and making them some scary terrorist organization is just,
it's very foolish.
Yeah, it's so foolish. It's so like them just trying to create some kind of enemy that isn't really there.
Do you think a lot of it has to do with the powers that be? They realize what the capability, what can possibly happen, is that they know that in deep down in the literature, it is a revivalist movement, right?
Yeah.
And it's an activism based movement, and it's cutting off any roots.
Look at how Pakistan handled Jamaat Islami. Jamaat Islami is the Ikhwan version of Pakistan.
Yeah.
Right. They just made them acceptable.
Yeah.
Like, okay, go ahead. But they knew like the institutions of Pakistan will keep them down and their message down. There's other modes that capitalism offers, other incentives that will supersede people's inclinations toward Islamic principles and Islamic understandings related to how dealings are. The muamalat, right? How. Well, when you have the capitalist understanding, you rely on people's worst inclinations, right? You rely on people's greed and power and their inclination to always make decisions based on profit. So people of Pakistan want to make money. That's the default. Yes, we all say Shahada and we all say we're Muslim, but we don't really understand it, And that's one of the things that we as Muslims need to focus more on, at least from the institutional aspects, whether it's like superstar scholars or what have you. I don't think Muslims really truly understand the Shahada really that well. I think they understand it on the surface level, but in order to uproot their capitalist ideas out of their mind, I don't think they do. I think we still make decisions based on me first, the human, the benefit to myself, and then if someone else happens to benefit from me, that's great. That kind of capitalist mindset.
You said something really, I think, profound. Is you said that the Pakistani government, what they did with Jamaat Islami is they made them acceptable, and that the way that diffuses people. I'm not saying Jamaat Islami in specific, but I'm saying when somebody's used to being reaction. I'm not saying they're reactionary, but when your dawah is very reactionary based, or you're used to standing in the face of authority, and that's what makes you thrive, right?
Yeah.
Whether on an individual level or on a group level, and that resistance is not there against you anymore, it almost diffuses you. And it reminded me of something. I had a teacher that was in Egypt, 2 teachers, and Mort probably had some teachers like this too when he was in Egypt, and many other people that were in Egypt. One of my teachers that I was reading Quran to, he had just come out of jail. And one day after class, we sat down, we talked for like 2 hours. I wish I recorded that conversation because it was one of the dopest conversations I ever had in my life, dude.
I remember this.
This dude was 25 years old. And and there was multiple people I had this conversation with. He was like, the first time I went to jail, I was tortured and made me even more strong in my ideas. And when I came out of jail, I was even more powerful, more aggressive in my dawah. The second time I went to jail, this is after the Arab Spring. He said the second time I went to jail, it was a completely different environment. He's like, we had PlayStations in jail.
Yeah.
They gave us phones. So they let us use cell phones. They had like, what's that?
They're playing ping pong, yeah. And they had soccer matches.
They had matches, and he's like, after that, everything fell. And like we came out, he's like, I knew brothers that didn't even care about the deen after they came out of jail. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, because they were so used to this resistance. And this resistance is what they fed off of. And when they went through torture, they had more of a mission. And people saw them on the street that they were even more powerful. And that riled more people to be more resistant in their da'wah. And even almost. I don't want. And I'm not talking. I don't want anyone to take this wrong with those brothers who've been to jail because of a deen. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the plots that happened with these governments and how psychological they were. In their approach.
like basically, give them. How about we break them through their
Give them everything they
human
want.
instincts? Give them the best of food. Have them pig out on Twinkies or whatever. I don't know. Sorry, pig
Camel
out.
out.
Twinkies are haram.
Camel out.
Twinkies have blood, right?
Not
You eat
in
haram food.
Egypt. Not in Egypt. Okay. Anyways, there's Twinkies in the
Halal
Muslim.
Rice Krispie treats.
Anyways.
I don't know. So basically,
No, I know what you mean. Make them very complacent.
yeah, eat everything you want. Play all the video games.
Squash. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, they were right. He's like, a majority of us that came out of jail, we didn't even think about that anymore.
Yeah.
It's like dunya.
It is, bro. When you feed them up.
Yeah.
But
Video
it
games,
depends the
Netflix, and food.
mindset of people that went in there. So remember, we were talking about like when people are involved in a certain idea. It depends what type. It depends how they approach that idea, and what they're waiting for the outcome to be based on their dawah, right? What their dawah that they're a part of. What outcome are they waiting for?
But also, you think about this crazy idea. Juxtapose their position with us in terms of us being free
Yeah.
and us having unrestricted access to take care of our base desires to no end. We can have all the food we want and all the movies to watch and all the pizza to, and how we've allowed that. We've willfully allowed that prison, that we set
just
up.
got simmed. We're about to get sim in here, bro.
We've willfully allowed ourselves to get subjugated.
You're right.
Dang,
that's pretty deep, bro.
Yeah.
Simmed. We just got simmed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just to come back to the original point that we're talking about, I think that the Gulf governments are trying to shift a blame onto one particular organization because they know that traditionally the quote-unquote Salafi, Wahhabi ideology was branded as something that was extreme, right? That is Saudi Islam. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if they can shift it and say, this is not really us, it came from somewhere else and we're rooting it out. So no longer is, like if you notice, they went through and they started pulling certain books. They started saying some other, saying, take this out from Ibn Taymiyyah, take this out from here. You shouldn't be teaching this anymore, right? So they're trying to clean up the Salafi dawah, right? That came out of the Gulf, and shift the blame and say, well, see, the problem's not with us. So our Islam is fine. We're compatible. Look at us. We can do deals. We can be modern. We can build towers. We're building a church. We got we've got normal relations with the Jews. It's not us. It's not us. Right? So they're shifting it because traditionally they always say what? When you look at Al-Qaeda, they're Salafi Wahhabis. When you look at ISIS, they're Salafist jihadists, right? I mean, they always say these kind of things, right? This term Salafi, jihadi, Salafi, Wahhabi, it always gets turned around. They never use the word Muslim Brotherhood, right? And it's funny how the neocons, they began to use this word, right? I mean, they started heavily putting it down, and say, Obama's a Muslim Brotherhood, right? They're the ones who had a thing for the Muslim Brotherhood. They had a hard on for them, right? But the other world, but when people, they were worried about politics, not so much like terrorism. But terrorism was almost unequivocally associated with Salafi Wahhabism, right? It was never anything else. It was hardly ever. And now I think they're trying to redefine that image and say, well, this is not Gulf born.
So I know we talked about this last week. But more, where do you think, based on this fatwa or this statement from this Council of UAE, how far do you think this is going to go? Do you think this is going to stop now? It just kind of had the limelight and it's done, or do you think it's going to keep going?
Oh, it'll keep going. This is not the end of it. This is just the beginning, bro. I mean, you're going to see a lot of changes. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Sheikh, this has a far-reaching implement.
But it's from the UAE,
Far-reaching.
though. It's not like coming from another major player. I mean, I think UAE is trying to be a major player, right? I mean, just because UAE says it doesn't mean that everyone's going to follow suit. I mean,
It doesn't matter.
in the grand scheme of things, who the heck is the UAE?
Well, the UAE is a major distributor or a hub for financial dealings that are happening in the world. So
Yeah.
it does matter where when your money's being wired through different various banks that are in the UAE and going to another organization, then you can be prosecuted by their government for funding extremists or terrorists or whatever you want to call them. Um, and you could end up being barred from the UAE. You could end up going to jail. Who knows? There's some brothers in Australia who got recently imprisoned as well, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, there's just a whole sort of things out there, right? I mean, it's just the thing is that look, they're struggling for an image. I mean, to put out an image, right? Right now, they're trying to get funding, well, not funding so much, but get the attraction to their countries and say, look, we're business friendly, we're compatible with the West, we're open for business. You can deal with us, right? And so there's a lot of what you're gonna do is you're gonna see them trying to tackle a lot of the Western stereotypes about the Middle East, right? And say, okay, well, it's basically going to be a checklist.
Other things, or not just oil. We're a major business player that you can come and visit and.
Well, not so much that. I'm saying there's a checklist of stereotypes that the Western world has about the Gulf countries, right? And forget about just being oil. They're anti-Jewish. They are, they're pro-terrorism. They are radicalized. Their women don't drive. All these things you see are checklists, right? Yeah. So they're going to start checking off these things one by one and say, look how normal we are. What are you talking about? No, this is not true.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, I'll give you an example. I'll say, oh, you know what? How dare you talk about, why would we ever go to Saudi Arabia? Women can't even drive there.
Yeah.
Right? Now that's checked off the list, right? You see what I'm trying to say? Like, most of the things that are bad in the spotlight are the things that are going to be, quote unquote, correcting or fixing, right? So those are the things that they're going to be trying to do because they're trying to redefine their image. They want to be a global player, not just a regional player. And in order to be a global player, because think about it, dude. Greece is going down the drain. Spain is down the drain. Most of these European countries are hanging on by the threads. Who's going to be, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard in the past, I'm not sure if it's actually true or not, but almost 1/3 of the world's wealth is within the Gulf. I mean, like the amount of money they have it's insane. It's astronomical. It's insane. The amount of money they have and resources they have. So, but the point is they're tired of being they don't want to be just a piggy bank. They want a seat at the table now. And in order for them to have a seat at the table, they need to be invited, and in order for them to be invited, they have to have a certain checklist of things that are aligned with the Western world. And those things that are not aligned, you're going to see them try to go after. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we had someone in our chat who wanted to know what kind of genuine question: how many well-researched books have the Mad Mamluk hosts read on the Muslim Brotherhood and its history? If several, do they have a recommended reading list?
Do PDFs count?
No, PDFs do not.
No, really. Let's start with
I'm going to say Return of the Pharaoh, Zainab Ghazali.
First, okay, hang on. I'm a veteran of this. This is something that is right up my alley. All right. First and foremost, required reading is Milestones by Sayyid Qutb. Okay?
Qutb, yeah.
You have to understand that. In the Shade of the Quran by Sayyid Qutb, it's a volume series of Sayyid Qutb's thoughts and
Tafsir of the Quran.
It is tafsir, yeah. What kind of, yeah.
You could also read Hassan al-Banna, His Life and Times. That's also a great book to understand what Hassan al-Banna's life was like and what he's all about. You can also read
like Return of the Pharaoh. That's not
Return
really
of the Pharaoh. Yeah, Return of the Pharaoh shows.
Yeah, no. Return of the Pharaoh. The reason why I say read that is because it gives a third-person view of what's happening outside. I mean, books about Hassan al-Banna like focus on him, but I think Zainab Ghazali gives a point about being on the outside, not being part of it, but being associated with it, and then the struggles that happen with that, right? Like she gives a little bit of a context of the environment, because in order to appreciate the Muslim Brotherhood, you have to understand the environment they were in as well too, right? And so that's really important to understand. You can read, I would say start with that book first, then go to like Milestones and understand the personality that this environment brought up, like Sayyid Qutb and Hassan al-Banna, because if you don't know the environment, the characters will become less important. Right, so you understand why they became who they were once you understand the context of the environment.
if you do choose to go with Return of the Pharaoh, you want to understand the political players of the time. You want to understand Gamal Abdel Nasser and some of the various players. When she's talking about these names as you read the book, you have to Google that and see who she's talking about, so that it paints a better picture for you in your mind.
And Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi has some decent writings on.
She writes the book as if you assume you know all these people. Okay, so if you're not going to pay attention to, or if you don't know Middle Eastern politics and you don't know some of the historical figures from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, then you're kind of going to be lost. So
no, but look at there's look at the prominent, personalities we have now. Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi has always, unintentionally been associated with the Muslim Brotherhood. He has books that he's written on the Muslim Brotherhood. But one crazy plot twist that I was thinking about last week after we're done with the podcast, Sheikh Muhammad Hassan al-Dado was the Amir of Ikhwan in Mauritania.
Oh.
Who's very close to Abdullah bin Bayya, Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya.
You think it's a rivalry or an argument
I don't think
between
it's
them?
a rivalry. I'm just wondering how all of this is going to manifest itself. Like, how far is this going to go?
So do we have to cancel you, Amr, because you studied under him?
No, you don't have to cancel anybody.
I want to cancel you. We have to cancel Sheikh Amr now.
Hey, I don't mind. My Wednesdays are going to free up a little bit.
I wonder if TMM is going to be
roundtables
banned
for
in
me.
UAE.
We're not
Hope not,
associated with the Muslim Brotherhood.
Hey, more. What are the best things about UAE? Like, top 10 items, top 10 things about UAE. So it's just
What about them? The best things?
the best things about UAE.
Here comes the boot looking.
No.
Oh man, no. I mean, personally, I tell you, for me, it's. I mean, the lifestyle is pretty much. I mean, it's easy adjustment for a person who's born and raised in America to go live over there. For me, it's an easy transition.
Qatar.
Yeah, I mean, but for me, I mean, that's just more. They have a head start on it. I mean,
I picture the UAE as a bunch of Dearborn style Arabs who just are gaudy,
what
No.
show off. So
not even. No, not even close. Not even close.
I've been there for like a night, on a layover.
Yeah, that's not even close, dude.
I did some tourism.
No, but that's not the UAE people. You actually won't even really mingle with the locals too much if you're over there. Like they won't even really. I mean, predominantly, it's not even the locals are only 11% of the population. Majority of it is foreign, so very likely you're not really gonna mix with them too much. You're probably gonna mix with people who look more like you, right?
Oh, yeah, I understand that part. I understand that majority of the workers are
I'm thinking not just workers. I mean, people who just live and have business. They're also non-Emiratis, right? They're just. I mean, it's not just.
I thought there were like 40% of the population, 30% of the population.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that it's not just people who are working. Like you're separating the categories. We're like, oh, it's the really rich Arab and there's a bunch of little crappy little workers that are just other people. No, there's very wealthy rich people who are non-Arabs, who are or at least non-Emiratis, that are also very much part of the society that you will mingle with, and like that you will that you have opportunities with. And it's impressive when you go and see that. The second thing about the UAE is that it's very safe. I mean, it's one of the safest countries I've ever been to in my life. I mean, let me put it to you this way: when you can see the ruler of a country, I personally saw him at a 800 pizza place, like it's called 800 pizza, 1-800 pizza, and he's picking up his own food, and he has no security. Like when you see that in any country, I don't care if you like him, you don't like him, but that's security. Like your people have to be genuinely happy with you if you can walk around without security, right? That's and aside from that, like I'll give you an example. I left a phone in the middle of a Burger King for like 6 hours, 2 phones and a wallet, and it wasn't touched from the same spot. I went back there and I just went back. Like it was almost like I just went to the bathroom and came back. No one touches it. They're very good about security. I mean, it's heavily surveilled, but you don't feel it. It's not like you feel like you're being watched, right? But they're on top of everything. It's business friendly. That's definitely a positive. If you are used to doing business, it's a free zone. I mean, there's a couple of things too. I mean, it depends on what you like. I mean, other things.
I ask the migrant workers in the UAE who have their visas held hostage, and some of the people who don't have that much money, who have to live with 20 people in a room, and they're laborers and stuff. Ask them if their life is very good.
Fair enough. But I will tell you this much though: most migrant workers that come there are usually screwed by their own countrymen. Like if they come from Pakistan or India, they'll say, you know what, we have a job for you. Pay us £2,000, and we got a good job placement agency for you.
That's
They'll
fine.
take their passports and bring them over there.
I'm not
Yeah,
taking off of them.
yeah. But what I'm saying though is that this is some.
Government. You as a government have a responsibility to make sure that the people, the people who are building your country's infrastructure, are well taken well care of, and they're not held hostage in your country. They don't have the ability to go back.
So generally, there's laws that are against that, and so if you have to report it, that's the problem. Like they have Darul Better Society, where you go out and do that. And now it depends. The problem is there's certain people within the government that may look the other way, but officially on policy-wise, it's not normal to do that. I mean, I lived there for years. It's not normal to see someone just hire 30, 40 people and living in an apartment. Maybe in some building construction, a construction company that might do that, it may be unethical for them. But if they get reported, they get shut down. I mean, just imagine, dude, there are Pakistanis right now who are workers. They're living COVID, and Pakistan won't even take them back to their country, and they'll provide them free COVID assistance while they're sick. They're hospitalizing them. They're taking care of them, giving them food delivery. I mean, insanity, bro. I mean, their own government doesn't want them back.
Come on, dude.
No, I'm being serious. I mean, if we're gonna talk,
They have their visas held hostage. Okay. I mean,
no, that's not true at all.
You are taking people who are so desperate that they'll take the scraps that the government gives them. Yeah, well, it's better than not starving at my own country. So
No. You're misunderstanding. That's not what I'm saying. They had a job, but their countrymen told them they could come back and work. And when they got stuck and screwed over by their own countrymen in a foreign country, their own country didn't want to let them come back from COVID, even though their bosses came back. And so hold on, the UAE decided not to just deport them back to Pakistan. The UAE decided to keep them there, provide for their hotel, provide for their weekly food rations, and then keep them there and give them treatment. I'm sorry, bro.
You're talking about some people who are much more higher.
Nope.
I think Sim is talking about pre-COVID.
Nope. I'm talking about regular street people, bro.
So
I'm talking about regular street people. I'm sorry. A lot of people have this concept that everyone goes to the Middle East is abused and treated like trash. I don't buy that, dude. I'm sorry.
Pudding, bro. The proof isn't a pudding.
No, are you basing this off of like
There's
Vice
several. Oh
documentaries?
my God! There's so many documentaries, so many human rights reports about how many labor.
Yeah, but listen, if you watch documentaries, you can look at America and say, "Oh my God, Chicago is the most dangerous place in the world. If you walk around, you're gonna get shot in Chicago." No, I'm telling you, it's called hyperbole, dude.
That's not a good argument.
It is. I'm telling you. I'm giving you an example. News everywhere.
You can say that about every single characterization of oppression in the world. You're like, oh well, you know what? They're exaggerating the whole Xinjiang oppression in China. That's what they do. That's what these documentaries do.
No, what I'm saying though is that from someone who's lived there and seen it firsthand, I don't see that. I mean, it's not as widely spread as they say everyone goes there who's there just living in like 30 people in a one-bedroom apartment. It's nonsense. I mean, dude, you have people that are like, I mean, now this may be true for other countries in the Gulf. That I have no problem with that. I mean, it may be true in Qatar, it may be true in Kuwait and parts of Saudi Arabia, sure. But in the UAE in itself, in Dubai, it's you don't see that. It's very rare.
Listeners out there who are from UAE or have been or have any knowledge regarding this. Our friend Mort saying that this is not existent. It's a fictitious in our imagination. Something created by the.
I don't think he's saying it's not existent. I think he said it's over-exaggerated.
It's overblown. We could.
Yeah, I would be happily debate anybody on that topic because I live there. So I mean, I understand. I know it very well. I've seen migrant workers. I've seen people that chose to work there over Qatar, over Kuwait, over Saudi Arabia because of the fact that they can earn more money. They have more of their own money. They're not responsible. I mean, there's a lot of different things. They have even protection for migrant workers. You can walk in as a citizen, as a migrant worker, and go to Darul Better Society and tell them you're being held hostage, and they will help you. They will help you in that case.
Hey, Mort, this doesn't jive with Sim's pre-bias though.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I'm just saying go there and live there go on tour for more than a day. Go and talk to the Pakistan. They will tell you, oh, my life is hard. My life, yes, of course it's going to be hard. It's not like they're going to be given free money, but they're not like being held hostage. They want to do that. Like they're there because they want to earn money more than where they come from. Sure, I mean that's just the way it is in any place, even in America. Migrant workers have a hard time because it's struggling. That's always everywhere, but they're not held hostage there. It's very rare that you find someone that's being held against their will in the UAE. Very rare.
Why do they take the people's passport as soon as they come?
They don't. You have your own pass. It's illegal to do that, actually.
Dude, there's many employers who take their.
It's illegal for them to do that.
Well,
it's illegal. Well, and and then they should report the employer. If they do report the employer, they can get held, they get fined for that.
You don't even know the language, how to navigate. These are
Everything's done in English, bro. Everything's done in English.
you don't know how to navigate that kind of life.
Everything's done in English and even Urdu, bro. The number one language spoken in that country is Urdu. Number one. You can go anywhere and find someone who speaks Urdu.
Yeah.
It's easy, bro.
I like you, Zaki. Zaki in the chat saying more gaslighting.
Yo,
Gaslighting.
Gaslighting.
Another word. Another phrase that-
Look, I'm telling you, just go live. I don't care if look. I'm sorry, dude. Arabs, I know acknowledging it is anecdotal, bro. I'm sorry. Zaki, I know who you are, but it's anecdotal, bro. I could mention one Arab who said, "Oh, it's perfectly fine there." It's not, I'm saying I'm giving you real life experience. I'm telling you, go there and show me where this is a policy of the United Arab Emirates or Emirati employers to take your passport and to put you in 10 people in a one bedroom. I mean, it's nonsense.
Who's gonna put that in writing, dude?
Yeah, I mean, but the kafala system is just a visa system, just like in America. We have an H-1B visa. You need that. It doesn't mean they hold your passport and hold you hostage. It's nonsense. I mean, come on. You're choosing to go there and work there because you chose to make extra. You want to make more money than the country you're coming from. Bottom line.
If these are like practicing Muslims, I would generally give more the benefit of the doubt. But these are people who like money, and they will place their morality beneath, or they'll place profit over morality.
Yeah, but I'm not going to play religion with this because it's not. It's just strictly, it's about policy, what's right and what's wrong, right? I mean, the UAE government does need to put more efforts into who they're bringing in the country, and it would have a better system. I agree with that. But to say that they're just taking, they're letting it, like, you're making it sound like it's open game to just bring any refugee or any migrant into the country and then just slap them around and use them like a slave. It's not like that, bro.
You hear all the time about all the murders that the female people do to their sons.
Bro, you know how many people get murdered in America? Russian, sex workers get married. I mean, it happens all the time, bro. It doesn't mean it's all. I mean, it's not the normal thing, dude. It's not the norm.
Mort Amar says here in the super chat, I grew up in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Mort is wrong, even though they even took my parents' passports and they are doctors. It may be more widespread than you think.
Listen, that's Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about the UAE. I told you that. I told you Saudi Arabia has an issue with it. I'm talking about the UAE. I said that very specifically. Back up, rewind it. I said other countries have an issue with that, but the United Arab Emirates does not have it. That's why they prefer to go to the UAE, because you're able to retain more of your own rights there. Saudi Arabia is notorious for treating workers and migrants horribly. So it's notorious for that. Okay, and no one's denying that. All right. I mean, same thing with Qatar and Kuwait. Of course they are. Oman and the UAE traditionally have had a better relationship with its migrant workers than any other country. It's bottom line. I mean, when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about first-hand experience of living in the United Arab Emirates. I've never met anyone. I've hired people that live there, migrant workers. I've hired them to work with me, and I've never had to do that. And there's no mandate for me to take their passports or any of that. Right?
If you're in the South, you should go work through Aramco. You can live the high life that way.
I mean, Aramco, you have to live in a compound. That's the problem. If you're in Saudi Arabia, you have to live in a compound, and compound life is boring. I mean, sure, there's you might find foreign white chicks who are bathing in a swimming pool, but that's about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really, whatever, you know. But in the UAE, you feel more. You don't have to be in a compound. Like, you feel more like you can have your own place. You can drive your own cars. You can have that mobility, the freedom, right? You have a lot more ability to do things in the UAE than you would in Gulf countries. Right, and I see people in chat saying, "Oh, you're supporting oppressive regimes." No, it's called speaking the fact. Just because you don't like certain parts of the government doesn't mean you just invent lies and make it sound like something it's not. Right? I mean, we see people do this reverse with other things. Like, we see non-Muslims do that with Islam and say, "Oh, Islam is so oppressive towards women. They can't they have to wear hijab. They can't drive. They can't do this," and they go over exalt and they over exaggerate this stuff, and that's the problem. Right? It's not if there's injustice in the UAE, we say we condemn it. Their campaigns in Yemen are wrong. I mean, the fact that they want the STC and they want to go in there and start bombing campaigns, it's wrong for doing that. The fact that they allow, they turn a blind eye to prostitution in the UAE is wrong. They allow sex trafficking. That's 100%. No, I can criticize the UAE for what it is, but this is not one of those things. That's the problem. I'm not going to unfairly criticize a country because I just don't like the way they operate. It's nonsense.
All right, fellas. What else do we have on the agenda for the week? I know Mayan has some interesting guests coming up on the show.
Oh yeah,
another trainee.
No, actually I do.
Niche Muslim podcaster for transsexuals.
I got Gareth Bryant coming up later this week. I don't know if y'all know Gareth Bryant, the Muslim model.
Karen Bryant?
Gareth Bryant.
Okay.
Is he a poet?
I think he does some. I don't know. He's Muslim. He's a person of different hats. The chaplain.
Hey, why don't you bring a lesbian on? That'd be more interesting now. I mean, you got a tranny already. Just bring a lesbian on.
You know what? I should probably explore that option. The recommendations, then feel free to hit me up. Ali Atai, I recorded with him this past Sunday.
Oh yeah, what did you talk about?
Can you give us a little bit of a teaser?
Yeah,
give us a teaser.
So we talked a little bit about his PhD thesis. It's more academic. It's like biblical.
Oh wait, you didn't talk about some of the blowback you received
about what
after the TMM episode?
Not really. His opinion has changed a little bit more back to what
the traditional. Okay.
The traditional. Because I asked him, because he was like, the problem is like an academic. I'm an academic, so we explore different things. That's our job.
Yeah.
Right.
He's right. Yeah.
Right. So now he's like, because I was asking him like to clarify some things, and he was just like, oh yeah. So I actually believe, like, he doesn't believe in the exact preservation the way he did 2 years ago. I asked him, like, people, they weren't asking. So it kind of threw off the conversation a little bit because I assumed he did.
Yeah.
But I didn't in the middle of the conversation, I understood that he actually
And how
changed.
long was this conversation with him?
Total like an hour and a half, 90 minutes. So
nice.
He's probably good for a podcast a year.
That's cool.
It took him he's a busy guy. He's writing. He's always writing, and he's got a book coming out later this summer. So yeah, I've got him, and I've got some other people scheduled. I got some randoms. I got some bodybuilder. No, I have a black business. I do have someone who's coming on who's trans as well. But
wait, did you say a black business?
A black business owner.
Okay.
But
wait, a black business owner who's transsexual?
Transgender is the proper term.
Does that mean it's pre-op or post-op? What does that mean?
No, some people don't have ops, but like this person, the thing about this individual is like it's not a.
This is so cool.
It's not the. It's not the basis of their interview. Like the first interview I did, that identity looked trans. Some people. So you like this person is probably not liked by a lot of the trans community because it's not like carrying the identity politics banner, right?
That's what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? This person just being trans is just like a side thing.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah. Hey, sorry, Mahini, to cut you off. This is a great question. I appreciate this question. Zeki says, how do you keep youth practicing Islam? As a revert, I see many born Muslims not practice or leave as reverts accepting in the U.S. Well, I'll be honest with you, man. My take is very simple. You guys understand what you have. Us born Muslims, we don't really see that sometimes till later on. You had to work for it. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like you don't know what you have until it's gone. Kind of like that kind of thing. So you actually had to. Allah gave you guys, opened your mind, and you had to go through that process of leaving something, the struggle of actually embracing that, right? Whereas Muslims who are born Muslims, a lot of times they're just culturally Muslims. And I hate to say that, but their parents might say, hey, don't eat pork, right? And don't drink alcohol. You're a Muslim, but that's it, right? They're just culturally a Muslim.
That's the thing that a lot of, Zeki, you have to understand that a lot of people who come from the Muslim world to America or the UK, they come from families who don't necessarily practice Islam to a higher level. They just know the basics, and when they come to America, they get easily assimilated into the various institutions, like the education system and the entertainment industry and things like that. They all play on a child's mind, and when the parental support or the support that the family surrounds a child with in regards to an Islamic upbringing, if that's lacking, the child will
it's
easily.
Not even lacking, so that they don't realize what they have to do in order to have that support system. A lot of times, they feel that education is high priority, which it is, or the highest priority. And as long as the child is well educated in school and has a quote unquote successful career, that's all that matters. But the child is going through so much in that process of attaining education in those phases in their lives that parents were not ready for it. I personally think that these things are going to happen. They're meant to happen. You can't save everybody. And sometimes you're talking to the youth, or you're talking to a child, and you see the direction they're going in, but because of their family structure, because of the environment and how they surround themselves, you know that it's only Allah that can help that individual, and it's Allah's decision at the end, right, of what's going to happen with that individual.
Yeah.
And you could try your best, you can do whatever you want, and at the end, it's all Allah's decision. And we see the same thing happening to the Muslim community, to happen to the Christian community. Third generation Muslims are now born, and it's much more difficult. It's difficult for them in a different way than it was for us to hold on to our deen. In our generation, it was like, man, we're missing out on so much, but we never ever contemplated leaving our deen. In my generation, that was like, wait, we never really heard of people, and when we heard about people leaving their deen, we're like, wait, what? Now it's a completely different phenomenon.
It's almost like phasing out in a way.
Yeah.
So like, but it reminds me of Allah talks about like how He will replace the people. He will replace, So
Oh yeah.
I think our parents unknowingly took a risk, right?
Unknowingly took a risk.
They took a risk, but I think it was a high rate of return possibly too, because if you think about like my own like family coming from Bangladesh, most people are still Muslim. I mean, there is a rise of like atheism there,
like in all other countries.
in other countries. But like when you go back, I went back a year ago and visiting family. There's still identity. I mean, so they're still like, they still care about Islam. They still have this religion. Even like less practicing people, there's still a practice there, right?
Yeah.
And they're not affected by certain like corrupt ideologies that you have in America. Like when I went to Morocco, I asked my tour guide, like, do you guys have a problem with the gender fluidity in Morocco? I asked him this question, and he was like, "What's that?" And I was like explaining to him, like, hold the trans thing, and like this person is a girl, but then identifies as a male, etc. Like, oh yeah, there's like one Majnun person that we heard about in Rabat or something. It's like one, you know what I'm saying? It's not like, but I think that in America, because we have free will, you have the opportunity to grow better, and really become like super Muslim, like Sheikh Amr, or you could be a degenerate like myself.
Like me and Mahin. Yeah, but you know what though, Mahin? I will say this though. Okay, I think there's an element you're missing here. In places like Bangladesh or back home, whatever it is, right? Yeah. Since the culture is Islam, someone's gonna pick up the slack, so to speak, right? They're gonna pick up Islam in the culture because they raise them as a village, right? The problem is that many of them, and like you end up doing these things because you're told to do it. Like it's just the norm to do that, because you're told so much, but it's the norm, right? Oh, you go to Jummah. You're supposed to go to, you don't know the fiqh ruling for going to Jummah. You just know everyone goes to Jummah on Friday, right? You take a shower, you eat, everyone gets together. Ramadan, everyone's fasting. You follow the crowd, right? The problem is in America, when you have a new culture that culturally isn't Islamic, and there's a new culture, the parents traditionally thought that, back home, the culture raised the children, right? And then now the culture is raising them in a completely different way, and they don't know how to tell them because they weren't told what it was. They just followed the culture. They'll follow the leader, right? So now it's just forcing Muslims like us, who are born Muslims, to actually have to read and be able to respond to arguments made against our positions and our religion, and that either will break you or make you, right? Like that's just how I look at it.
Every nation has to go through that phase, right? The beautiful thing I always thought about this phenomenon is our parents' generation came to the United States, even though they didn't have as much Islamic education as some third generation Muslims do, second generation Muslims in America do. But they were the torchbearers, and unknowingly, they didn't know that Allah was using them. They didn't know that Allah used them to come to America. They just thought they were going to make more money, a majority. They thought that they were going to have a much better life. They were going to leave the shackles of the backwards Eastern world, so to speak. But when they came here, they didn't realize that their children, by way of Allah, were going to start seeking the deen, even though it was a few. And then Islam was going to become so popular and prevalent. Like I would talk to my dad about that. He's like, I would never think that when I came to America in the 70s, mid-70s, that you're going to have children in America memorizing the Quran. It never crossed our mind. But they were the ones that built those institutions. They didn't realize what they were doing. They just realized, oh, wait, dude, we got to start praying like we used to, like back home.
No, they thought they were going to go back, some of them. They thought, we might even just go back home.
My dad used to tell me that all the time. His plan originally, when he came in like 84, was like, we're gonna go back.
Yeah, and that's Abu Hassan Nadwi. He was
But
America. Yeah,
but then you get used to the good life, right? You're like, oh man, that McDonald's, that Burger King, that ATM machine. No, but I mean, so I mean, but to speak about Sheikh Ahmed's point though, he's 100% right. I think what happened was, keep in mind, we talked about this, we touched on this before too. Our parents' generation didn't have the luxury of choosing to go to a Salafi masjid or a Sufi masjid.
Yep.
Or like a halal sighting versus non-halal sighting, right? Like they didn't have this thing. They were like, oh my God, we're here temporarily. We need a place to pray. So let's just rent a gymnasium or let's just buy the small house, right? And those little grassroots organizations, as the need came, you had like, from those you had like Sunday school. Then you had full-time school. Right? Then you have like, now you're going to see things like nursing homes and that's how it's going to grow, because the population is aging and they're not leaving. And they're realizing, wait, we have our own needs as a community in this country. And we've got to figure out how to rectify that with Islam and with the culture that we're in, right? No matter how you look at it.
And more, check this out, man. I know we talked about this before, but something that also that we should think about is after this generation goes, right? Who's going to be maintaining the masjids like with as much heart as the older generation still does, right? The uncle, the quote unquote uncle crowd that we call, right? And the aunties, right? That take care of all these extracurricular activities that used to happen in the masjid, the upkeep in the masjid. I don't know if our generation is, I feel like we're too self-centered and too individualistic to care enough like the older generation did. And even though people say what their care, what they come through with is 50% of what we're capable of doing, of what this generation is capable of doing. But I don't think this generation has the zeal to take care of like our previous generation.
I think there's a focus that they had, singularity of focus,
Yeah.
it seemed like. Because when I talk to, occasionally I meet people in our generation like that. So the guy who used to be my landlord when I first moved up to the Bridgeview area, he actually runs a towing company. Good business though, apparently, because people love to park illegally. But I was asking him, he's like mid 40s, grew up in Chicago, and I'm like, yo, hey, Matt, what are your hobbies? And he's like, man, my family and work, and he works 2 jobs, and then it's like this. I'm like, yo, okay, that's kind of like, for me, it's like, all right. We got a like Ertugrul Osman, Gurlish Osman episode drops Wednesday night. Ohio State plays Saturday. We got a podcast. All these Jordans Sakai's are coming out tomorrow on the sneakers app, right? And then maybe I'll get a class in
materialism.
Yeah, materialism. Like, there's a lot
Well, no, but I think what that is, that you're kind of afforded that luxury, man, because your parents put the work in. Like, I mean, I'll be.
we
But
gotta
it's a
maintain
double-edged
it.
sword,
What I'm
though.
just saying though is that like who in our generation, because I'm not involved in like I think I see. You know what I see now? I see a lot of converts
Yeah.
handling.
Yeah.
generation
I was
work.
going to admit that's the thing.
It's not
Allah will
Spanish.
replace you with the nation.
Look at
That's what
Islamic
you're talking about.
Spanish.
Yeah.
Look at Masjid al-Mu'mineen on the west
Yeah.
side of Chicago.
Yeah.
Look at the Ohala Foundation.
No, but what I'm saying though is that not only that, Muslims are also going to have to start gearing towards, and mark my words, they're going to be looking for self-sustaining, renewable, probably masajids, like where they have to lower overhead cost, where they can, create communities around the masajid, because they're going to have to be able to fund it. Like, keep constantly asking, because look, man, as masajid and communities grow, for asking for millions of dollars of donations every year, right? It's just too much, right? They're going to look for a better way to do it and to make these different masajids self-sustaining. And I think that's the next phase, right? And that's gonna be done by the convert Muslims, by the ones who are experts, like in the area, who know the ins and outs of it, who've done and bring their expertise, because they have, a lot of them come from evangelical backgrounds where they had these mega churches, they had these communities around churches, and they're gonna bring that information and show the community how to, and they'll lead in that. They'll lead in doing that. I believe that.
All right, next question. Another
Cool.
super chat.
Oz says in the super chat, thank you for that generous super chat, Oz.
Yes, Oz,
Will
thank you,
the
sir.
Muslim community in the West become like the Jewish community, where we have Orthodox and liberal communities who are separate? I think it's already has. It's
Yeah.
not will become. It's clearly evident
Yeah.
with
It's the beginning of the beginning.
yeah,
of
when
that.
you see people like a certain class of Muslims that are in media, like Hassan Minhaj, Rabia Chaudhry, and those type of Muslims who are generally not considered, part of the practicing Muslim community. They're generally considered entertainers, and they have some kind of element of Islam that they bring to the masses, where it's
As an identity
usually
marker.
it's
Yeah.
usually like playing identity politics and using Islam to identify with some level of victimhood and oppression and stuff like that. But
Material.
it's not in any effect where you're teaching the world that Islam is the solution for all the ailments that prevail around the world.
So basically, the only time they use Islam is like when they get kicked out of a restaurant, or they get thrown off an airplane, or it's because I'm a Muslim.
It's basically like Fanan's their playbook, and then sometimes the Quran.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
very
like you don't pay for an item in this convenience store, and they try to catch you. And you go, because I'm a Muslim, right?
More real quick, but aren't the Jews like Orthodox conservative? Isn't that like almost more formalized?
I mean, Orthodox Jews, to be honest, they're very close knit, and like they have their own. I mean, to be honest, they're completely separate from like the other Jews, like the liberal Jews. Like they live very poorly. To be many of them do. Like they have their own communities completely like out. I mean, they're like completely separated from modern media and influence. They're regulated even what kind of phones they can have. Like they're completely like imagine they're like the Amish to the Jews, right? Like they're very cultural. They get married young, lots of children, just yeshiva, no technology, right? Everything needs permission, right? So I don't think we'll be like that, but I think what the guy's saying in general, I think I agree with that. I think there will be an Orthodox, traditional Muslim orthodoxy that exists. And there's going to be a very clear line. And I say this here, bottom line, I don't think it'll last very long. I think the ones that go liberal, their children will be kuffar. Like it's not gonna last that long. Because let's be honest for a moment, right? And I hate to use examples, but if you have someone who's like marrying, whatever kind of woman or man, and they have a whole like a jambalaya Islam where they can mix whatever they want with it, right? The children are not gonna grow up with Islam. Why would they become Muslims, right? They're pretty much gonna become kuffar and they'll die off. Right, Allah will eliminate them just by their own process, right? By their own doings.
Right, you guys got y'all know Tariq al-Musa. He's on HGTV.
Yeah.
There are people with these names like you're like, are they Muslim? Like Omar al-Attar, he's a famous podcaster. Like, who are these guys? Are they Muslim? And then like, nah, you ask like, oh, there's a guy named Yahya Bekar. He's like, I was like, these are Muslim names, and you look into them, like, oh, when they had a Muslim parent, a singular. So it's gonna happen. What Mort said. You have a singular Muslim parent who marries some Kaffir chick, and then it just fades away. That's what happens, right? You're like, oh yeah, I believe in religion, I believe in God, and my family used to be Muslim or.
I'm a spiritual person. Yeah, I'm spiritual.
I'll say this: Hassan Minaj is a collaboration with Kohan. Them Jones is fire.
Kohan shoes.
The shoes, yeah.
Are they dress shoes?
They're like he has some boots and some like dressy sneaker types.
I like Kohan though. I like their shoes though. They're pretty good.
They're actually really nice.
I'll check them out. Yeah.
Maliki brings up an interesting point. I don't think any born Muslims will ever let converts lead. Never have, never will. I think a lot of times these born Muslims think Islam is theirs. Maliki, I think it's a more simpler explanation with regards to born Muslims and organizations about who they choose to lead. And I'll tell you, it's very simple in who they choose to lead. It doesn't matter whether it's a born Muslim or a convert. It's about who has the most power and influence, and who's bringing the most money to the table, who brings that kind of support. These organizations don't necessarily. They're not operating from the same frame. Yes, they have like a loose-knit framework of Islam, but it's heavily influenced by capitalism and by the mindset of money and power and the various elements that drive the political mindset of people who have adopted capitalism as their framework. So it's no surprise to us when we see whether it's converts or even Muslims that are born Muslims, but they're born in this country, and when they have good ideas, they're not elevated into positions of influence in certain institutions. But now I have seen it changing with respect to.
With this generation, it's a little different.
Yeah, as we've seen some of the more born Muslims who are being given places of leadership in. I know, like for example, MCC, right? MCC is very active. It's a mosque that's the oldest mosque in Chicago, and they've made a organized commitment to allow their youth, the best of their community, to come forward and take the mantle from the previous generation. Whether or not the other mosques follow suit or other organizations follow suit is anyone's guess. And I guarantee you, when you see silly guys like Saeed still leading ISNA, you know that these people, they're not in reality. They operate in another world where people who have influence and their main criteria is the building of finances and the catering to certain bases.
So it's not has this like luncheon that you ever heard about? It's like $200 ticket. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Every ISNA conference, there's like the Saturday luncheons, $200 a ticket.
Oh, right? Yeah, important.
So it's like the prayer breakfast, right? You got a network over there.
Yeah. So what happens is this. So one year, my boy from Houston, he was like, "Hey, my dad just bought a whole table. You want to go?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I went one year. It was when it was in Detroit, and he's like, and my friend's telling me, he's like, "Hey, man, all this lunch was," and I watched it. All these old uncles giving each other props about how awesome they are.
You are very good. You did a great job this year.
Standard, like, you ever go to like a hotel where they give you like it's a chicken with like 3 green beans and like a cart, and like it's like that kind of food.
Yeah. It's like, no, but let me just respond to most. Wait, I just want to say something to Maliki Click real quick though. Don't take that hard, man. Like, the generation in the past is gone. I'm telling you right now that ISNA and these organizations are going to be a thing in the past because they're not able to adapt to the modern times. Pretty soon, you're going to have massages run by people like, at least not run by, but the people who inherit are going to be people like myself, Sim, other people like this, and we're used to seeing revert Muslims around. Like, it's not a new thing for us, right? It's gonna happen, and if it doesn't happen that way, I believe the convert community will do it at a grassroots level, and they're gonna outpace the Muslims, because think about this, bro. The regular Muslim community like us, we're too busy doing podcast and snowboarding and smoking e-cigs, and we're not gonna go into the masjid. I mean, we're not going around to. I mean, it's just not gonna happen. You need that zeal, you need that fire, that passion, right? And that comes from people who are putting that work in the deen, right? And that work is coming from and if it doesn't happen at these big organizations, mark my words, your generation, the younger generation, is gonna take it and go to like a grassroots level. With the age of social media, with the age of YouTube and like things like this, and social justice activism, those will be the forefront, man. All these organizations like ISNA, dude, they're not gonna be around for another 10, 15 years. I'm telling you, they're gonna be insignificant. If they don't change, if they don't change the way they behave, they're going to be insignificant. They will be canceled, not because of a massive, an eye opener. No, people will just lose interest in them. They're going to say, "Wait a minute, we just don't relate to you people anymore."
Right,
100%. And I think it's up to individuals that listen to shows like us, and it's you have to take power. You can't wait around for these old broken down institutions. They serve their function, and they're just on their last legs, and they're going to collapse within a few years. It's just, especially with the advent of diseases like COVID, and most of these mass gatherings are going to fall apart. Well, inshallah, the Hajj isn't affected, but a lot of these kinds of regular gatherings are going to be more virtualized and stuff like that. Who knows how many different mutations COVID undergoes and how quickly the world is able to adapt to different vaccines that are coming out. There's so many different factors. I don't think the whole convention model is even a legitimate model. I think we fracture. I think everything's supposed to be so decentralized.
I love the bazaar, man.
No, they serve a function, but majority of the stuff that you can get online on Etsy or what have you, everything in the bazaar.
No, there's cake, dude. I mean, it's nice. I mean, you go to the bazaar, it's nice. Mahin likes the bazaar. We're gonna have a bazaar. You can't stop it.
People, I always enjoy going to ISNA and RIF, these conventions, because they connect. The network, right?
Yes.
No, I like the network. I know. Okay, so what Sim is saying is essentially right. But all jokes aside, the idea of having to sit in a lecture hall and create this huge event to hear someone talk is no longer. It's not It's not something that you think that would be the best way to do it anymore, right? I mean, most people go for social networking, right? They're not really going because they're gonna learn something crazy or something new they never heard before. They're going because they generally come from small towns that, or they just want to network with other Muslims in the community, or buy things or whatever. Or just take a vacation with the family in a halal environment, right? It's not really like that. They're gonna hear a bombshell at the conference, right?
Yeah.
It's not the best mode of gaining information either, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. I agree with Sim, but I think these things will just break off into like family retreats. Like, you know how they're doing a husna, like where they have like a retreat in the Caribbean islands, or like, you know, or there'll be more like vacations, not really like actual learning, you know, or like, you know, breakout sessions and things like that, right? Think about it. Most people who come to these conferences are either for the bazaar or for matrimonial issues, right? That's really the bottom line, right? I mean, that's a networking. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Did we have anything else?
Not really. Just a comment here.
There we go. Zeki, I think reverse.
Well, any born Muslim that feels, a convert that feels like they don't have family, I told you, just message me anytime on Eid. Anytime you're alone, just message me. I'll give you an invite, man. You guys are more than welcome to come out. I may not be in the same city, but you guys are welcome to come out and hang out.
Yeah, I think.
Simply read that.
Zeki says, I think reverts and ex-Muslims have one thing in common: we're both disowned, ostracized from the communities we're born in. Sometimes, ironically.
Yeah, can I just say mentions? Because I want to mention something about Maliki. Sorry,
go ahead,
bro. So look, as far as Maliki Click, man, I really appreciate your comment, Zaki. I appreciate your comment. First thing I want to mention, guys, I'm sorry that you guys are in that situation. Just to make that statement, it tells you what experience that Maliki Click had and Zaki had, right? And there's many other people that experience who revert to Islam. In order for him to say that born Muslim organizations will never let revert Muslims, take any type of initiative, or it's very unfortunate that you guys had those experiences, and many of you Muslims probably had that experience. So, on behalf of people, I apologize, man. That's not, someone shouldn't have to go through that, especially being from the Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Secondly, as far as this Ramadan that we had on our own, and I really, one of the things that I felt during this Ramadan, I felt like a revert. What reverts had said all along on Eid, they go to Eid Salah, they have, they meet a lot of brothers, and then everyone just goes to their family parties, and then they just go home, right? As far as reverts and converts. And I know that there's a little bit of awakening in the Muslim, in Western Muslim world, and just anybody who's, a revert. I think it's starting to change little by little, but I did get that feeling. I was like, dude, this is kind of what it is, because all the people that we talked on Eid, they were just like talking to them on the phone, or just, you know what I'm saying? And it was just like Eid Mubarak and praying Eid at home, or whatever the case is. So that's one thing that's very unfortunate. I apologize. And I apologize that, Zeki, that you're feeling ostracized. But I will tell you one thing. This generation is much more different. And this generation, and I'm not saying the previous generation was bad. One thing that I'll tell you is that the previous generation, when they saw a revert Muslim, they either had an issue with not accepting them the way they should have been accepted, or pushing them to the forefront as soon as they become Muslim and giving them khutbah. That happened once in a while too.
Someone's like
one of my friends.
Someone's like convert porn.
I don't know what the heck that means, but
you know what I mean? Convert porn. Oh, brother, how did you become Muslim? Tell your story. That kind of thing, and popping it up in that way too.
No, because I knew a brother who became Muslim 2 weeks later. They wanted to start giving khutbah. He's like, I'm not ready for this. But that's rare. I know that's rare. So one thing is that one of the tests and trials and tribulations, and please don't take this the wrong way or misinterpret what I'm saying, Zaki and Maliki Click, right, is one of the tests that reverts have into Islam after they become Muslim is Allah tests them with that sense of community also. And I know this, someone may be like, dude, that's coming from you, someone who was born Muslim. I get it. And I know this may sound disgusting, but I personally believe that this is a part of the test. I'm not saying it's okay what Muslims do as far as ostracizing. I'm not agreeing with that. I'm completely against that. But one of the things is that if you're a revert, and this is for anybody who's a revert or a convert, you feel like your voice is not being heard. You feel like someone is belittling you. You feel like you're being ostracized. Know that the human beings are not loving you, but Allah loves you. And there's nothing more grand than that. because the greater the test, the more greater there is love from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you feel that someone's stepping on your toes and they're not even listening to you, remember that your ajr is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All those people who ostracized you, your level is much more mountainous than there is in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is Muslims are human beings, and human beings come with this baggage, and it doesn't allow them to see other people. They don't know how to have too much empathy, right? Because they're human beings, not because they're Muslims. Islam is not asking them to do that. It's their humanness that's not prepared for this new situation and not having empathy and not having enough emotional intelligence. So that's why I think, this whole new thing about emotional intelligence, Muslims should be pushing that on a much more, acceptable scale, much more competent scale. But for the Muslims who are listening, who are not reverts, who've been born Muslim, know that there's brothers here that we know very, very well. And these are brothers that have been vetted into Islam for a while, especially Maliki Click. I think he said he'd been Muslim for like 20 years, right?
29 years, he said.
Allahu Akbar, almost 30 years. And he still has that feeling, right? And it's almost his comment, this reason I'm so sad by his comment, is he feels like even after all these years, he's given up on the Muslim community. Right?
Here's a psychological phenomenon that happens especially with that people have said or tried to study the human mind. They said, why is it when you see a coworker, some of you work with in the office, when you see them at the office or when you see them at the grocery store, they don't look familiar to me. They seem out of place. Like, wait, you hardly even recognize them because, and I think I forgot the name of that phenomenon, but let's discuss the effect and how that plays out. Like if your mind is categorizing a certain type of face, a certain type of feature for their office, and it's misplacing it when you see it in the grocery store, you're like, wait, this is what's going on here. Your mind gets scrambled. Like this place doesn't belong here. So when you see a white person or an ethnicity that normally doesn't belong at the mosque, and you see them at the mosque where traditionally you were seeing Arab and Indian people, and let's say even Asian people. Like you don't see Asian people at the mosque, right? So if you see that those kind of ethnicities, you're like, wait, what's going on here? And you're just not really able to contextualize. Your brain is still kind of getting used to that. This is the immigrant factor, right? People from back home, they're not used to it, and it's still a rebuke to Muslims who have grown up here, is that many of them, they don't go to the mosque. And you see the immigrants who've come from overseas, they've come from various places, and you can tell them, I promise you can, if you pay attention to the clothes that they wear and how they dress and how they talk, these are not the kids that have grown up in this country. You hardly see many. I mean, I know Sheikh Amir's mosque is a more of a centralized location that in Illinois and outside Chicago, but majority of the smaller mosques, you'll see 95% immigrant. You're going to see. You're hardly going to see any young Muslims who were brought up in this country.
Yeah, that's true.
So think about that. I mean, it's not necessarily a Muslim thing. It's more of a human thing, like Sheikh said. So
no, but not only that, man. Like I feel guilty of something. Like I remember you mentioned Asian. I think like at our masjid, even at IFS, like when I see somebody that's like definitely I have never seen them there before, I just want to go up to them, especially if they're like, I saw a brother that that looked like Japanese or something, I just want to go there and greet him and stuff, but I got to be careful about that too. I don't want to get all weirded out, like who this dude all of a sudden.
It's like you like oh,
but you get happy.
All of a sudden you found like a novelty or some kind of,
and I don't want to treat it like
something, some exotic creature. You're like, ooh.
Yeah, but it's because look, we at home we speak Urdu with our parents. We have desi food. We're still immigrant at that level of culture, right? We still, I even talk to my kids in Urdu to whatever I can to the best of my ability, and we have desi food. I mean, everything is very, very still Indian immigrant about us. So even in our masjids, when we see someone that's not like us, we still get excited. Yeah, and it's kind of weird, but it's like you don't want to make the person feel uncomfortable. You just want to go and give them a big hug and be like, welcome. Yeah. But you don't want, so
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that new thing, that new face, like you were mentioning, right? Yeah. But anybody who's a part of any organization, and they're deliberately leaving reverts out of the conversation and the discourse, that's a big problem. That should never happen. That's not an Islamic thing. That's a human problem. And that problem obviously should never exist anywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Folks, thank you for joining us this evening. Help us out on patreon.com/the Mad Mamluks. We hate asking for this, but it's your support that helps our show continue. And without your support, this show will not last. So it's really important for you, the people, supporting us rather than major governments and other multimillionaires who are vested. There's been many times people, listeners, and people who have influence in society who said, Sim, we can put you in touch with someone who is really wealthy and they can bankroll your whole thing. Like, that's not what we want. We don't want someone controlling everything. It becomes. I would rather have an organized assembly of our own patrons, telling us what their feedback is, and this is the most easiest way to let us know what you think about our show. I value our patrons' opinion the most. It's not to say I'll change my opinion because our patron is saying that, I'll cancel my subscription based on my opinion, but I will definitely pay more closer attention to them.
Real quick before you let
yes,
a friend of ours, Ustad Wissam Sharif, his father passed away last week. His uncle passed away a day before. They're two brothers, one in Virginia, one in not COVID. One in Texas, one in Maryland. So
Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi
just keep them in your du'as. Both named Muhammad Sharif. It got me thinking about like our people our age. It's like that generation that established us.
Yeah.
Is passing away.
Yeah, they're gone, man.
And so Ustad Wissam's brother, Muhammad Sharif, was like, he talked about paving the way for like people like Said Sharif in Chicago. Y'all know him. It's like something people came in, they sponsored all these family to come here, and look what they did.
Yeah.
They established masajid and programs like Wissam Sharif's Quran program, etc.
Yeah.
So just something to think about. Inshallah. But keep them in your du'as. They go through some tough times, but something's a reality for us.
Cool. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you all next time. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, salam.